Before we start along Lover's Walk, let me tell you a little bit about Peterculter and its surroundings. Peterculter is known locally as Couter. Couter is likely to have been derived from the Gaelic compound word culter, meaning back country. The area around Couter has a long and varied history. Flint tools from the Mesolithic and Neolithic periods have been found on the banks of the Dee near here. Some Bronze Age sandstone spearhead moulds were also found, which are now in the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford. The Normandykes Roman marching camp was less than 1.5 miles southwest of the village, near the golf course. You can see how close it was on this map. The ford on the river below the camp provided access from the south for the Roman legions. Much more recently, Peterculter was the home of Couter paper mills. The company was established in 1751 and was renowned for its fine quality papers used for maps and even banknotes. Until the mill closed in 2009, it would have been difficult to meet someone in the village who did not have some connection to the paper mill. In 1853, the railway arrived in Peterculter. Originally, this was the terminus for the Aberdeen suburban line, although there was also a short branch freight line to Couter Mills. Eventually, the line was extended to Ballater to make it easy for Queen Victoria to visit her castle in Balmoral for her holidays in Scotland. For over a century, this line provided easy access to Aberdeen and beyond. But unfortunately, this convenient route was closed, along with many others in the 1960s by Lord Beeching's short-sighted cuts to save money. Below Couter Station, St Peter's Church stands on the site of the earlier 12th century St Peter's Chapel, a church with associations to the Bishops of Aberdeen, the Knights Templar and Kelso Abbey. King William the Lion bestowed the church to the abbey and monks of Kelso about 1165 to 1199. On the 16th of October 1673, the original kirk collapsed. Temporary repairs were made and the church remained in service until 1779, when a new church was erected. The erection of this new kirk resulted in a tragic accident when two labourers were killed while collecting stone for the church building. This is commemorated by two marker stones, originally situated on land used for Peterculter golf course. They have been resited here next to the church, now St Peter's Heritage Centre. On the 12th of July 1779, one of the hottest days of summer, Andrew Donald and Robert Burnett, servants to a farmer in nearby Kennerty, driving two carts, were struck dead by lightning. Two of the horses were also killed. A son of the farmer, George Donald, who was riding on one of the carts, was knocked over and left stunned. But the story doesn't end there. 4 months later, on Sunday, 24th of October, the same George Donald and an Elspeth Masson were instructed to stay behind in the church after the Sunday sermon to be interrogated by the Kirk session. Elspeth Masson, a young servant girl, had alleged that George Donald was the father of her unborn child. She said that while collecting water for the farm early on the Friday before George Donald was struck by lightning, he accosted her and pulled her into a barn, where he had been guilty of uncleanliness with her. George Donald vehemently and insolently denied this charge. He was rebuked by the Kirk session for using indecent language. His protestations weren't believed. The session deemed him to be an obstinate offender, but prosecution was delayed in the hope he would have a change of heart and confess that he was indeed the father. There was no DNA testing in the 18th century, which would have settled the matter. There's another interesting building adjacent to the car park. St. Peter's Heritage Hall, formerly the church hall for St. Peter's Parish Church, sits on part of the glebe land near the River Dee. It was in use as an iron kirkie in Ballater until about 1907, before being brought to Couter by rail. Ballater Episcopal Church was paid £100 for the building. The hall was rebuilt here in 1907 by the Kirk session and congregation of the church at a total cost of £226, 13 shillings. Interestingly, as the hall was built on glebe land, the minister was due compensation for the loss of part of the minister's grass. His annual stipend was therefore increased by 15 shillings a year for every year the hall remained here. The allocation of minister's grass provided the minister with enough land to graze 2 cows and a horse if he wished. Now we have learned a little bit about Couter's history and background, it's time to stretch our legs. The short, circular Lovers' Walk begins from St. Peter's Heritage Trust car park. Today we will walk clockwise, starting from Couter Station on the Deeside Way towards Aberdeen, along a flat section to Pittingullies and then down to the River Dee and back to the Heritage Centre along the riverbank path. This part of the Deeside Way follows the old railway line high above the River Dee, providing some great views of the river through the gaps in the trees. The Deeside Way is a long-distance walking and cycling path, running from Aberdeen on the northeast coast to Ballater in the Cairngorms National Park. For much of the way it follows the old railway line and is pretty flat for easy walking. It has become a very popular destination with locals and visitors alike. Nature is never far away on this walk, and it's worth stopping for a moment to listen to the bird song. Today the birds are well hidden in the undergrowth. At the path barrier, we leave the line and take the road down towards the river past the entrance to Camphill School. From here, it's a short walk on a good path before you reach a little sandy beach by the river. If you're lucky, you might disturb a heron or even an otter here along this stretch. In summer, a great variety of wildflowers abound along the banks in amongst the tall vegetation. A challenge for amateur botanists to try and identify them. Every road we wander. The River Dee is an impressive river, famous for optimistic anglers hoping to land a salmon. Though any salmon caught will not grace their dinner table, as all are required to be released back into the Dee. If you doubt the existence of salmon in the river, here is a fishy but true story that might convince you otherwise. In December 2015, after Storm Desmond flooded part of the nearby Peterculter golf course, ground staff got the surprise of their lives when they found one salmon swimming in a flooded bunker at the third green. In summer, the river has a soothing tranquility about it, but in winter and spring it shows a different face when flooded with rain and melting snow from the Cairngorm Mountains. This path requires regular maintenance as it periodically gets eroded by the river when in spate. In recent storms, as we'll see later, trees on the steep bank have been brought down, blocking the path. Eventually, the path finds its way back to the car park between St. Peter's Church and the Heritage Hall. City lights that burn so bright, starry night in countrysides. The same path, but a change of season and a change of direction. In December 2022, we tried the river path to Pittingullis. Clearing storm damage took some time and hadn't yet reached Lover's Walk. The path was too dangerous and we were forced to give up. A year later, in December 2023, we tried again. We wander black of night to gold of dawn, we'll see. The path had now been cleared. The low December sun makes for interesting photos. Before rejoining the Deeside Way, this notice made an impression. It wasn't long after our Christmas excesses, and it was an ideal prompt for our New Year resolution. December had been mild but very wet, and there were many puddles on the old railway line to avoid. We are soon back at the old station platform and at the end of our 2-kilometre circuit. It took us just under an hour with a few stops on the way.
As the world goes by, we'll be side by side and we'll let the sunset glow carry us home.